today we are interviewing Mrs. Williams. She is the CEO of Citizens of Humanity. And so, hello, how are you today?
Good, thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much for being here. And so, let's start out with the first question. So, where did you go to school, college, grad school, and what was your major in college?
I went to SUNY Buffalo, which is one of the 4 large universities in New York State, very similar to the California school program. I majored in political science with the intention of going to law school. And obviously that wasn't something that I ended up pursuing, but I graduated from there with a Bachelor of Science.
And so how has college how has it impacted your life?
Gosh, in a lot of ways, actually. It was during college that I really found the career, what ended up turning into the career that I loved. And I think, just to back up for a minute, my college experience impacted me because I came from a very small high school, a school whose values were very similar to Saratoga, I think, and Los Gatos. And they focused on developing really well-rounded students. So we were all engaged in different after-school activities, or maybe had jobs or other hobbies that we pursued. And at the same time, there was a focus on academics, but not particularly competitive. And when I went to college, the university was much larger. So I went from a class of 100 peers from first grade all the way through high school to a college that had 27,000 people. And because the school was so large, I had to kind of find my own way and my own group of friends, part of which happened outside of school with a job in retail that I ended up, that I just loved. So it impacted me, I think, both in terms of the actual academic part, but also the just overall dynamics of a school that large and needing to get involved and participate.
So do you think it's today, in the 21st century, do you think it's important for students to be well-rounded in all aspects during their high school career or even college?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I like to think of myself as someone who's not biased in any way, but I am biased about developing and thinking about sort of like the whole person, because I believe that if you find things that you're passionate about, and you feel and you can develop your confidence both in and out of school, that you'll find your way into different opportunities, and you'll seek out opportunities for learning and personal growth, which are ultimately, I think, what makes all of us feel the most happy and gratified.
Right. Sure. Yeah. And so what decisions were most important to you and to where you are today professionally? So what were the big answers or the big questions you had that your answers basically got you to where you are right now?
That's a really good question. I would say being open. I think the big questions for me were about sort of pursuing a lot of different things and going with my own gut instinct about what felt interesting and what people felt interesting to be around. And that then led to opportunities for example, when I was in college, I ran for student government, and I was the treasurer of our school. We had a very sizable budget. All of the students had to contribute a certain amount of money. And from that budget, we ran all of the different school programs. And we're talking about like millions of dollars back in the 90s, because the school population was so large. But it wasn't anything that I ever thought about doing. And I had been involved in student government in high school. But a friend of mine was getting involved and thought it was something I would enjoy. And I just thought, sort of, why not? And so for me, those kinds of questions about sort of like who's involved and is this interesting have led me down paths that I might not have planned for myself and have been the most and have come to be the most interesting.
So just jumping into something and see what comes out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Be curious and see where it takes you.
Okay, thank you. And so what's one nugget of wisdom you your present self would wish to have told your teen self?
Don't be afraid to fail. I tell our kids that a lot, and it can be something as small as like, oh, you get something wrong on your homework, and I think the natural instinct is to be like disappointed or I got it wrong and tuck it away. But actually as an adult I realized like, oh, that one wrong is an opportunity to learn and to understand what you don't know and not feel judged. Your teacher's not judging you, your parents are not judging you. The expectation isn't that you're going to always know the answer, but you are in life and at school and are out in the world to learn and to grow, and just let yourself do that. Don't be afraid to fail.
So do you think the focus has shifted towards getting the answer right versus learning what
I do. I think
the mistake you made was?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of emphasis on getting things right, and then that being a path to a higher level of math programs or a certain school group that's considered to be aspirational. And if that becomes your focus becomes very small, and you can operate from a place of fear rather than expansiveness and learning and growing. And to me, it's one of the things I think we can do better for kids is to let them understand and to know that learning is really a great opportunity and a great gift.
Right, especially now. We've been using the same school system for hundreds of years, and so obviously something needs to be changed.
Yes.
And so did you have any mentors or significant events that changed your worldview growing up?
A lot of them. I don't know if at the time it changed my worldview as much as it changed my belief in myself, number one, and number two, my love of other people and being open to other people. So, couple people kind of fall into that camp. My father, for one, he was incredibly kind and open-hearted. He was a doctor and would come into contact with his patients sort of like all around town. But he was the first person in our family to go to college, and he still helped take care of his parents who managed a grocery store and had always hoped their son would go to college but didn't know how they could make that possible financially. And so he was always focused on working hard in whatever you did and really trying, but also balancing it with a very soft touch and big heart. And that balance has always stayed with me. And other people, I think, over time who inspired me and motivated me were typically people who were also very philanthropic, who were successful in whatever career they chose, but also were very active in their community in a smaller sense or in bigger, broader issues like public education and things that mattered. And they always stepped in and participated and got involved, which I find to be really inspiring.
Right, yeah. And so what was the hardest thing that you had to deal with, and what did you learn from it? Or some of the hardest things that you had to deal with?
The hardest thing I had to deal with, I was catching myself getting emotional, was my mother. My mother had gotten sick when I was young, quite young actually. And at the time I was 7 years old, and she was very ill until I was about 15. And it was hard because that sort of fantasy and picture, what you read in storybooks about mother-daughter relationships or family experiences, weren't part of my everyday childhood. But what I got from it, I think, was a strong sense of, or an ability to be resilient and to understand that things happen to everyone. And certainly the pain that she went through and probably her own disappointment about not being around for my brother and I as much as she would have liked was hard for her too. And it certainly brought me closer to my friends and teachers at school and my father. And so like anything, there's opportunities for amazing sort of growth and love to come out of situations, and there are times that are really hard, and both together and sort of blended together make us who we are.
Right. And so how do you deal with failure? You talked earlier about mistakes and learning from them. So how would you deal with not being able to reach the level you want to be, or just failure in general?
I'm not as good as it I would like, admittedly, right? Because I do have, I have a lot of pride, and it's still something that I struggle with. I've, as an adult, sought out more opportunities again to learn, like to be new at something, like horseback riding with our daughters. It was always something that interested me, but I didn't know, I had no skill or no experience with it. And so now I think I'm just more gentle on myself. And as we try and teach our kids, I need to model that behavior myself too. So I'm trying to be more accepting and open about my own failures, and at times, whether it's at work or home, hold them up so other people know it's okay to make mistakes. But yeah, I'm not as elegant with it as I could be.
But do you think that sometimes your fear of failure drives you and motivates you to not fail?
I think it's my desire for success, and I don't mean like the traditional success of like money or things like that. I take a lot of pride in the work that I do, and I genuinely love the work. So I think it's I'm internally competitive. I'm not competitive with other people, but if I think I can do better at something, that's to me like where the failure sets in. Like I know when I haven't tried my hardest, or I know when I haven't been completely focused on a task at hand. Maybe I'm multitasking or doing something else, and I'm more aware of that now. And so to me, those are like even smaller failures that I'm becoming more aware of, and I have a desire to change and work through.
And so when you work through, obviously, there are going to be times when you lose hope. So how do you deal with burning out, when you're working at something?
Take a walk with my husband, my friend, go play outside, take breaks. I realized that, again, maybe when I was younger, I had the stamina to work 14 hours without like looking up and just grinding. And now I'm more aware of the need to step away from something, to recharge and to be able to do it more effectively later. And I encourage people at work to do the same thing. It's not about what time you get to the office and what time you leave. And if you can be effective and allow yourself time to think, time to work, and time to step away, it's really, really healthy.
Sure, yeah. No, especially now because a lot of people in the engineering backgrounds and doctors, especially, high stress environments.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, taking breaks, I'm sure.
I listen to Headspace. Seriously, I do. I meditate and I do things like that, even if it's just for a couple, minutes. Or I do love like being outside and taking walks. Yeah. It's really helpful. And I've read a lot about even just like walking and talking and how that changes. It's a good way to even have a business meeting.
And so how do you think your ability to form relationships with people has affected your career and your life in general?
God, that's a really good question. I think it's the most important thing. If I go back and say, okay, why have I enjoyed my work as much as I do? It's because of the relationships with other people. If I think about constructing a whole life, like having a family and friendships and a career that I love, again, it's all related to people. But I would also say that if someone had to summarize, like in my field, what allows someone to be successful, it's really people skills. It's at the end of the day, yes, there are some that have gone to design school and that's a specific talent, but almost everyone else in this industry has an ability to work well with others, bring out the best in others, listen well, move or motivate people towards an end goal. And more, I think that people skills and working with others is on the top of the list in any field or any career that you want to pursue.
Right, because the emphasis on academics, I'm sure also many people don't have the time to have that ability to form relationships and solid bonds between people.
Exactly.
So I'm sure, it's very important. And so what is your advice to the next generation for living a meaningful life?
Be really honest with yourself about what makes you happy. You don't necessarily need to know it when you're 10 or 12 or 15 or 18. But when you do know it, because that can kind of strike you at any time, and you can be aware of it at any point in your life, don't be afraid to pursue it, and don't think about what everyone else thinks you should be doing. That would be one piece of advice. I would say, secondly, find a great group of people who you feel support you and you can be your honest self with.
Right.
Family, friends, one other person. It's not the quantity of people, but that support network is really, I think, key. And just go for it, like what you're doing. It's like, okay, this is interesting to me, and I'm going to put myself out there. Only good things will happen when you do, because people love that, and that energy is contagious. And so I think those elements are all really important to creating a successful life.
Yeah, and deep words for the next generation. So moving on to the final question. So what's your next big goal?
Figure out truly how to have work-life balance. That would be my big goal. Our youngest children are almost 9, and I have good intentions of, like, when it's family time, really being solely focused on my husband and our children, and finding time for work that's just work, where I can really think. But I don't always get to do those things as well as I would like. And what also falls short is, like, my own time for things that I might individually enjoy, or that are, like, nourishing and allow me to have the energy and the purpose when I'm with my family or at work as I would like. So that's my next big goal. I think anyone who works and has a family or is part of a relationship of any kind, friendships or otherwise, has a hard time doing that. So
right.
My podcast list, there's a lot of themes to the books that I'm reading. It's all about, like, parenting and developing our children and that work-life balance.
Thank you. And so just a few follow-up questions.
Yeah.
So how important do you think is reading for the current generation right now, reading books, reading literature and nonfiction?
I think reading is incredibly important. I, grew up, I'm 50, and when we grew up, obviously we didn't have cell phones. Computers were just starting to be used for, like, reports and things of that nature, and writing. And I think reading, like, real books allows the mind to develop, and allows, like, the left brain and the right brain to connect in ways that technology does not allow. So I think it's really, really important.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.